This episode is made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for out-of-spec viewers. More information in the link in this episode's description. Hello and welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast channel. I'm your host, Isaiah, and I'm here with Walter from the Network Architect channel. How are you doing, Walter?
Doing very well. Thank you, Isaiah. Great to be back on.
Yes, this is your second time here with me. I really want to get into the nitty gritty of the charging infrastructure we're seeing at a lot of rest stops, major gas stations that are going alongside major corridors, turnpikes, highways, and even inside some of the metropolitan cities. And I thought, who else to bring on but someone who knows everything all about that. So I guess let's kind of just jump right into BP Pulse. And so this is something that you guys will see on the Out of Spec Reviews channel later this week. But BP Pulse is opening a new charger in Jacksonville, Florida, about 2 hours away from me. And I'll be going just to kind of scope out and see what BP Pulse is doing with TravelCenters of America. And so Centers of America is a large gas station kind of rest stop, right? With a ton of amenities and also a truck stop.
Travel center.
Right. And so people can stop there, get gas, refuel, use the bathroom. And they're adding chargers there as well, which is super convenient. And so I guess what are we seeing alongside what BP Pulse is doing in North America?
Okay, so BB Pulse has kind of been an interesting animal. There's something called greenwashing, I think is the term, which means that a company is just doing things that's giving lip service to environmental regulations, but they don't really have their heart behind it. And when they first did their announcements, I was wondering if that was what we were looking at. But I've come to understand the answer is no, because if it was a greenwashing effort, what you'd see is like a couple of select locations, and it would take a really long time to build them, and there wouldn't be any marketing behind them or anything. But that is definitely not what we were seeing. We're seeing major constructions going on simultaneously in multiple different locations with top of the line hardware going quickly, and they seem to have marketing behind it as well. So this is definitely not greenwashing. What they are doing is they are reacting to a change in their core business, and they're providing services to a burgeoning market of consumers. They operate, as you say, these travel centers throughout the United States. And there's a lot of real estate at these travel centers, so it makes it pretty easy to carve out a couple of stalls for EV charging and then kind of bridge that in and give the EV community a place to stop, refuel, and come and have some of the services that they provide.
Awesome. And so this station here, right, in Jacksonville specifically, this goes alongside some of their travel center, one of their Travel Centers of America stations. Do you know how many of these we see? I mean, I've been seeing through PlugShare, there are like multiple, but I was wondering if you had like an exact number. BP seems to be working on a lot of these stations across America.
I believe it will be a fluid business decision as the market unfolds before them. I think they're not, they don't have a definitive number yet. There's no map that shows their targets. We do know that they have submitted NEVI applications and been awarded, I think, 36. I think they're in the top 10 of NEVI recipients. And all those are at Travel Centers of America. So we do know that there are those that will get built. However, how many more in addition to those is anyone's guess, but we are seeing construction occurring at locations that are non-NEVI. In fact, a little bit further north on Interstate 95 from where this station is are two additional locations. Neither one of them have received NEVI awards, nor do they seem to have been submitted for consideration under the state NEVI programs. One, I think, is Richmond Hills, Georgia, and another one is just west of Jacksonville, and the name of the town escapes me right now. But that again indicates to me that they are not just trying to do a money grab for free federal dollars. They have a business plan that NEVI is convenient to assist with, but it is not their sole source of funding.
Okay. And I guess if we can kind of elaborate on the NEVI funding. So just for those watching, NEVI funding is federal funding given to states to provide chargers to private companies, funding those. And that's if that's correct.
It is. And just today, I saw the inauguration speech of President Trump indicating that the um, Green New Deal and EV mandates were going to end, which is, I guess, outside of the scope of what we're talking about here. But the NEVI program funding for stations, I understand, has already been allocated out of the federal budget. So those stations will get built because the money has been allocated to the states, and it's outside now of the sphere of influence of the federal government. It's in the hands of the states in order to disperse those funds. So the NEVI program, as it stood January 20th, 2025, I think is going to proceed as was occurring prior to that point. Whether it continues is, I guess, a discussion for a future time. But anything that has been awarded funds is likely going to proceed to build.
Okay. Good to know. All right. I'll definitely have to make a video. We'll have to talk about in the future, kind of elaborate more. And so, kind of talking more about the DC chargers themselves. The BP Pulse was one of the first companies to announce that they're going to be using Tesla's own supercharger stall sensors, the version 4s, for their own charging stations. Now, right now, we see here that they're using the Alpatronic HYC 400s, as well as, I mean, the other stations we saw right in Richmond Hill was also using the Alpatronic stations. There's actually a station about an hour out of Jacksonville that you did a video on, and I saw that it had two HYC 400 Alpatronic stations and then 6 Tesla supercharging stations. Is that like consistent with how I guess how are they laying out these plans?
Yeah, so it looks like what they're doing is they're splitting the stall count between J3400 or NAX and CCS. And in order to accommodate that, the way they're selecting the hardware to support both standards is either Tritium or Alpitronic for the CCS handles. And then anything that is J3400 that they want to incorporate into a site plan, they use the uh, rebranded Tesla Supercharger system. But I think Tesla still kind of runs that in the background, and they provide the network functions for the payment. And I also understand Teslas can see those chargers in their navigation system as Tesla chargers. So there's very heavy integrations that still exist with those chargers. It's just operated by BP Pulse.
And so still BP Pulse would be managing the service and maintenance of these chargers.
I don't think the maintenance. I think the maintenance will still come through the Tesla Supercharger team, but they'll pay them similar to like what you would see with an EVgo Extend or a Electrify America commercial arrangement where the site host actually owns the hardware, but they pay kind of like in a charge point model for maintenance of their hardware. And then they just get the hardware with the well-known reliability brand that everyone has come to recognize.
Okay. And these stations, right? These Tesla internally calls them the 3.5, but what we know is the version 4. So these will still have right the mobile connector with CCS as well as NAX, right?
Well, it will likely those won't be enabled similar to what we're seeing currently as the trend with Tesla superchargers, where although there is a Magic Dock adapter built in, it's not being released or made available to customers in most locations. So I think that'll be similar in these locations also, and they'll just be J3400 stalls that are supplied with the Tesla supercharger dispensers.
Interesting. And that'll be something we could probably find out more this week. Now, kind of moving past BP Pulse, right? We have Flying J, Pilot, as well as Love. I guess if you could kind of give us a clear vision of what these providers are doing as well. I mean, I think it's super important and for all EV enthusiasts and drivers, right? Having access to charging across major corridors, highway exits is just the easiest way to do it. And having right these stations like Pilot and Loves and Travel Centers of America with these giant stations and rest stops just makes things easy. So I guess what we're seeing across the board, because to my knowledge, like Flying J and GM have a pretty big like collaboration going on.
They do. And I didn't know this prior to going into this project. And just, the reason why I'm following Pilot Flying J is because I'm a Cadillac Lyric owner and I have free charging at Pilot Flying J because if you look at the dispenser right over here, it's an EVgo charger and I got 2 years of free charging. And I was just looking to see where these things were. And I found that this Pilot Flying J thing seemed to be getting some steam. So I was just following it, making YouTube videos concerning where these stations were. And that's basically where this came from. They currently have 131 stations. And as I started to venture out and see these stations, they're a monster. Pilot is the largest truck stop operator in the United States, and they're co-branded Pilot Flying J. I think second is Travel Centers of America, and third is Love's as far as size go. Love's is a privately owned organization. Travel Centers of America is owned by British Petroleum. And among the three, they're just really well outfitted. You would think of like a convenience store on steroids. It's like a huge convenience store, very large convenience store, and they always have attached food in the same facility. So like a Subway or an Arby's or something attached inside the facility. But most importantly, they're open 24/7, 365. All three brands are, anytime you pull into them, they're directly off the interstate exit. And all three brands are open 24/7, 365. So they're safe because they're staffed, they're well lit, they're immediately off the interstate, and they never close. So it really makes a great location to place a EV charging station.
Awesome. And I guess what are we seeing specifically with Love's? Because I saw in your video you mentioned, right, Love's is a privately owned company, family run. And so how are they, I guess, outputting their charter? Because right, Pilot Flying J has GM, and I guess these are the as it EVgo as well. If I'm
Correct. So it's what they call EVgo Extend. So these chargers are operated by EVgo, but they're owned by Pilot. And I believe the way it works is General Motors actually pays for the hardware to be installed or to be delivered. And then Pilot takes them and installs them on their property and then operates them after that.
okay, cool. So yeah, so like, they have EVgo. BP Pulse has Travel Centers of America, or Travel Centers of
Mhm.
America has BP Pulse. What is Love's doing?
They've aligned with ChargePoint Express Plus, the 400 kilowatt dispensers. And they're doing something very similar to what Pilot Flying J has done with the canopies. At the locations that I've seen so far, and they've only have three that are open, and I think a couple more spotted under construction. What they seem to be gravitating towards is putting the electric vehicle charging dispensers immediately adjacent to the gas pumps and then just extending the canopy over the electric vehicle chargers.
Oh,
So that's about as good as you could possibly hope for because lots of times at the Pilot Flying J's, the electric vehicle chargers, although they'll have canopies, they're kind of like off to the side. And yeah, that's a good picture. I forgot which one that one is. But as you see, they're immediately adjacent to the gas pumps, and it's a short walk into the convenience store. So they seem to have a terrific plan, and if they follow through with what we've been seeing so far, it's definitely hard to argue against that.
kind of going back to what we talked about in the beginning, BP Pulse. So BP Pulse is using the Tritium, Alpatronic, and
Tritium, yep,
Tritium.
Tritium, Alpitronic, and the Tesla Supercharger, correct.
What is the difference between, I guess, the HYC 400 stations versus the Tritium? Why, I guess, why is BP Pulse using both for Alpatronic for some stations, Tesla for some, and then Tritium for others?
Boy, I don't know, and I definitely have some questions. So curious to see how this transpires. Their site design does seem to be rather erratic. They're like at the Pilot Flying J. There's only one choice, and it's
Right.
four stalls of the Delta dispensers, all outputting 350 kilowatt split. So, as you say, at the BP Pulse, there's a much more wide spectrum of site design that they seem to be inside their toolbox that they're going towards. Love's is four stalls, similar to Pilot Flying J, but their site design seems to be more close to the gas pumps with a canopy over them. So a little bit difference there. But if you go to a interstate exit and you see like a Love's immediately adjacent to a Pilot Flying J, and then a Travel Center of America, maybe up one exit. If these three actually finish the builds that we think they're going to finish, it's just a dramatically different landscape for EV travelers going up and down interstates after this, because you could choose a Love's at this stop, you could choose a Pilot Flying J at that stop, and Travel Centers of America at this stop. And we got choices, and the choices are really good, top of the shelf choices to choose from. So definitely the outlook looks good.
Awesome. And the pricing, I imagine, is they're going to be competitive with each other because, right, they're all kind of in a similar area. I believe in your video, right, you showed that it was 43 cents for the Jacksonville charger.
48.
48. Thank you. For every kilowatt hour. Is that something that we're seeing across the board, or is it regional, like how we see Tesla and EA do?
Well, we don't know yet because of the GigaHubs and Travel Centers of America, which are the two that I'm tracking, there's only two stations that are open. The one in, I think it's Caddy,
Yeah.
Texas, in outside of Houston, and Jacksonville, Florida, both of which are 48, which is unusual that they're similar in price in such a different area of the country. Normally, in a different area of the country, you'd expect the price to be a little bit more variable, but them being exactly the same price is a little bit telling that they seem to be trying to stay under 50 cents per kilowatt hour, which is good to hear.
Thank you so much, Walter. I learned like an absolute lot. I hope everyone watching learned a lot as well. Do you have any other insights or any other information, I guess, that you would think would be helpful for viewers to know, especially as we see so much charging infrastructure kind of come at once? I think 2025 is going to be a big year.
Yeah, so there's two additional players in the travel center interstate refueling game. One of which I think is going to be Shell Recharge, although they don't have a truck stop brand that they're building into. Their efforts look to be similarly in line with BP Pulse, which is their major competitor. If you look on a global scale, it's basically BP Pulse and Shell that have the majority of what we're talking about here as far as energy delivery. So Shell's is going to be very similar, and we already see stations in a similar fashion, not greenwashing. We actually see large numbers of stations already under construction, and what I'm calling greenfield, where you just have a blank plot of land, and they're not flipping a gas station. They're just building a charging station fresh out of the ground, similar to the GigaHub efforts that are going on with BP Pulse. So they're going to be another big player. And I think the elephant in the room is Ayana, who has openly stated that they're going to be putting their rechargeries on interstates as well. So the funding that Ayana has seems to be darn near limitless, considering the backers to them are some of the largest corporations in the world as well. So we have Royal Dutch Shell, or Shell Oil Company. We've got BP Pulse. We've got the backing of the Ayana organization, all pouring money into DC fast chargers, and Ayana is going to be split between local rechargeries and interstate rechargeries. So it's going to be, at the end of 2025, dramatically different to take an interstate road trip in an electric vehicle than it was at the start.
Yeah, I'm looking at this Shell map. When you said that, I brought up what Shell has, and they seem to be still kind of like corralled towards a metropolitan area and going outwards. And of course, more rural areas will need to see some work. But I didn't know Shell was this vast. It's a lot of chargers.
Yeah, they've definitely released press releases very similar to BP Pulse as far as what their plans are for the trajectory of electric vehicle chargers. And they specifically said they're going to be closing 500 gas stations per year for 2 years straight, for a total of 1,000 gas stations closed. And their intention is to mostly replace those with electric vehicle charging stations.
Really? Okay.
Mm.
And that's Shell, as I said, right? You were saying that they build up those stations from the ground up, so they're not just quickly attaching them to Shell gas stations.
Correct. Well, they're doing that as well.
Right.
So very similar to what BP Pulse is doing, where they are putting charging at BP gas stations, but they're also similar to BP doing the GigaHubs. Shell is doing something very similar, where they're just taking a green field plot of land, they're purchasing it outright, and they're putting in a electric vehicle charging station that does not have gas pumps. So there's multiple locations that are like that currently under construction.
Amazing. Okay. Wow. My mind's blown here. Thank you so much for all
Sure.
this information. I mean, I will have Walter's information linked in the description. Kyle's an avid watcher. I was going through the videos. I was like, oh, Kyle's here pretty often, and I see why. You are very knowledgeable with this, and it's amazing how a simple interest in to your lyric has kind of created this huge knowledge and channel that has so much good information on it.
Well,
So
thank you. And I would like to say that really all I was trying to do is I believe that at a certain point it's going to make economic sense for what's known as C-store or convenience store operators to add electric vehicle charging to their properties because the marketing and the cost and all these things start lining up. And then there's going to be kind of like this flashover point or this boil point being reached. And I've just kind of been lying low, collecting data, watching for the trajectory to take off. And by my reckoning, if we're not there already, we're soon to be, because there's so many convenience store operators that are putting in electric vehicle charging on their property, and it's no longer a political question; it's an economic question. And once that happens and private money shows up, there's really no stopping it.
awesome. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I will yeah, again, Walter's information will be in the link in the description. I'm like amazed by how much is happening. As we've kind of talked about, right, 2025, I think is going to be a pretty big year for charging infrastructure. And this is just where the market will follow. So we'll just see more and more of it. But thank you guys so much for watching. I believe, Walter, I will see you at the BP Pulse event.
I will be there.
Awesome. So looking forward to seeing you there. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the description, the comments, and then we'll make sure to have those answered. But thank you guys so much for watching. This is the Out of Spec podcast, and I'll see you guys in the next one.